One of the stories I love from fighting chemophobia is the curious case of the poisonous socks. And this comes from the first synthetic chemical, which was movine. It's a purple dye. It was extracted by William Perkin in 1856. He was this young entrepreneur who dropped out of school to make millions out of industry. And he created this purple dye, which was instantly a success because purple, up until that point, had been reserved for nobles, for elites, for royalty, for priests, etc. Because it was just so hard to find, and the fact that it was so expensive made it a luxury. It had to be extracted by individually hand squeezing these little mollusks, and you got little drops out, and then every time you handled it, each batch would have a slightly different color. Some of them would be red, which was not expensive. Some of them would end up blue or purple, and it was a laborious process. So once he found out how to make synthetic purple, fashion just boomed, and people could now, the middle and lower classes could afford purple clothing. It was fantastic. Now, just 2 years later, in 1858, the second ever synthetic dye was released, and it was called fuchsine. Now, fuchsine was this bright pink dye. So 2 synthetic chemicals are now on the market, and they're all the rage. They're dominating fashion trends at that time. The royal family is wearing them. And one of the famous products that came out was stripy socks. So you've got this fuchsine movine alternating bands of stripes on socks. Now, pink at that time was very popular for working men. It was a men's color, and you had large numbers of working men, particularly miners, wanting to wear these pink and purple alternating socks, because pink was considered lucky when you're working down in the mines. So people started getting these weird bands of rashes, these alternating bands of rash, no rash, rash, no rash on their feet. It seems to be that the rash was caused by the pink dye, the fuchsine, but not by the purple dye, the movine. So doctors started wondering, what is it about the fuchsine that's giving these people rashes? Well, cases started getting worse and worse. There was even one person who was made permanently disabled. He was a sailor. He bought this t-shirt on the south coast of England that was entirely fuchsine pink, which again was very fashionable for working men at that time. And he became so disabled and so sore that he was unable to work as a sailor from that point onwards. But there was an interesting discovery that women who wore fuchsine clothes seemed to be unaffected. And then later research found that it was actually not the fuchsine dye itself, but when fuchsine mixed with the acids in the sweat that comes out of your skin would cause a toxin that would then re-enter the skin and cause eventual paralysis. So this is essentially when men learned that wearing pink was a bad idea, because it caused genuine medical problems. Women who wore it at that time would sweat a lot less. They weren't working in mines or in hard labor jobs, and the sweat therefore didn't create the toxin when it reacted with the fuchsine dye. But when men went down into the mines, they would sweat, or the sailor, for example, he would sweat working in his t-shirt all day. The sweat reacts with the fuchsine, creates the toxin, which causes illness. So men learned never to wear pink.